King Kwabena sat on his golden throne, staring at the flickering torchlights along the palace walls. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, and the echoes of distant drumming from the city filled the grand hall. Outside, his people celebrated the Odun festival, a time of joy, renewal, and offerings to the gods. Inside, the king felt nothing but emptiness. His wife, Queen Adesela, sat beside him, adorned in rich silks and gold, her beauty sharp as a blade. She had ruled at his side for 15 years, given him sons, and secured alliances, yet their marriage was nothing more than a political arrangement. "You seem troubled, my king," Adesela said, her dark eyes watching him closely. "I am simply tired," Kwabena muttered. "You are the lion of Asongwe." "You do not tire," she replied, her voice laced with amusement. But there was suspicion in her gaze. Kwabena said nothing. Instead, he stood and walked toward the balcony, looking over the sprawling city below. The sound of laughter and music rose from the streets, where commoners danced and drank freely under the moonlit sky. He longed to be among them, to forget, even for one night, that he was king. Without another word, he turned and left the palace. Disguised in a simple dark robe, Kwabena walked through the narrow alleys of Asongwe, moving past vendors selling roasted meat, perfumed oils, and fine fabrics. He listened to the laughter of children, the drunken boasts of men, the seductive calls of women in the pleasure quarters. That was when he saw her. Abeni. She stood beneath the soft glow of lanterns, her beauty effortless, her presence undeniable. She was not like the noble women he knew, cautious and submissive. No, she stood like a queen among outcasts, fearless and untamed. Their eyes met. "You look lost," she said, smirking. "And you seem to know your way," he replied. She laughed, a rich, melodic sound. "Only a fool wanders into this part of the city without knowing where he is going." "Perhaps I am a fool. Or a man looking for something he cannot find in a palace." Kwabena stiffened. How had she guessed? Abeni stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "You carry yourself like a man who wears a crown, even in disguise. But I see something else in you, loneliness." Kwabena exhaled sharply. No one had ever dared to speak to him like this. "Come," she said, turning away. "Let me show you the world beyond your golden cage." And against all reason, he followed. They spent the night wandering the hidden corners of Asongwe, the secret gardens where lovers met in the dark, the rooftops where orphans slept beneath the stars, the quiet shores where the river whispered secrets to the wind. Abeni was unlike any woman Kwabena had ever known. She did not kneel before him, did not flatter him, did not fear him. Instead, she challenged him, teased him, made him question everything he thought he knew. "You rule a kingdom," she said, "but do you even know your people?" "I have fought for them, bled for them," he answered. "But have you ever lived among them?" He had no answer. As the night wore on, he found himself drawn to her in a way that terrified him. She was forbidden, yet irresistible. He was a king, and she was nothing more than a woman cast aside by society. But in her eyes, he saw something real. And for the first time in years, he felt alive. Days passed, and Kwabena could not stay away. He returned to Abeni again and again, losing himself in her laughter, her touch, her fire. If you have watched this far, please subscribe. Now back to the story. But secrets never stayed hidden in the palace. Queen Adesela had spies everywhere. One evening, as she stood before the royal council, her voice was calm but deadly. "My king has taken a lover," she declared. "And not just any woman, a common harlot." The council murmured in shock. Some looked horrified, others intrigued. "This is dangerous," Chief Elder Olabode said. "The people will not accept a prostitute as his consort." Adesela clenched her jaw. "She is not just a whore. She is a threat to the throne." The elders nodded in agreement. In Asongwe, a king's mistress could wield influence. And if Kwabena's love for Abeni grew too strong, he might even defy tradition for her. That could not be allowed. Deep in the dungeons, Kwabena sat in silence, his mind racing. He had to escape. But how? As he struggled with his chains, footsteps echoed down the hall. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man dressed in royal guard attire. Commander Jahi. A trusted warrior. A loyal warrior. Jahi knelt before Kwabena and whispered, "My king, we do not have much time." Kwabena's eyes narrowed. "You serve the queen." Jahi nodded. "I did. But I serve Asongwe first. And if the queen thinks she can rule alone, she is mistaken." Kwabena's pulse quickened. "You will help me escape?" Jahi pulled a small dagger from his sleeve and sliced through the chains. "We will not just escape," he said. "We will take back your throne." As Jahi led Kwabena through the secret tunnels beneath the palace, they heard distant voices. Abeni's execution was beginning. "Go," Jahi urged. "Save her. I will rally the loyalists." Kwabena sprinted toward the execution square. But when he arrived, Abeni was already kneeling before the executioner. The crowd was silent. The executioner raised his sword. "No," Kwabena gasped. "No!" Just as the blade came down, Abeni moved. With lightning speed, she rolled to the side, freeing her hands from the loose rope. She had cut herself free. Before the guards could react, she grabbed a fallen sword and fought like a warrior possessed. The crowd gasped. This was no helpless woman. This was a woman born for battle. Kwabena rushed forward, grabbing another sword. Together, they fought side by side, a king and a woman who was never meant to be queen. Then, from the palace balcony, a voice rang out. "Queen Adesela." She was watching everything. Her lips curled in amusement. "Interesting," she murmured. "Let's see how this plays out." The battle lines were drawn. Kwabena and Abeni leading the rebels. Adesela and the council holding the palace. For days, the city of Asongwe burned with civil war. Loyalists turned on each other. Assassins struck in the dark. And in the midst of it all, Kwabena faced his greatest choice. Did he want to be king? Or did he want to be free? It ended in the palace throne room. Kwabena stood before Adesela, sword in hand. She was beaten. Her guards had fallen. Her allies had turned on her. Yet, she still smiled. "You think you've won?" she whispered. Kwabena lifted his sword. "Your reign is over." Adesela's lips curled. "Then finish it." Kwabena hesitated. He had once loved her. And in her eyes, he saw something tragic, a woman who had fought too hard for a throne she never truly wanted. So he lowered his sword. "I am not you," he said. And he walked away, leaving her to her fate. Kwabena stood before the people. They cheered his return. They cried for justice. But when they demanded a new queen, he did not choose Abeni. Instead, he released her. "I will not chain the woman I love to a throne she never asked for." Abeni's eyes filled with tears. "Then what will we do?" she whispered. Kwabena smiled. "We will write our own fate." And with that, he turned away from the palace, leaving the throne behind. For the first time in history, a king chose love over power. And the world never forgot it. Adesela smiled coldly. "We must act before it is too late." To be continued. Kindly like, comment, share and subscribe for more.